And so when we came out of the gymnasium, we both had music degrees, and we had degrees in wires. It was a wire-based program. We studied many types of wires. We studied combination wires, Asian wires, Brazilian wires, one half iota, two half iota wires, they were all sorts. And this really helped us in the analog synthesizer market. We really carved out a niche for ourselves. And in there, we found the capital with which to found our funky beats.
As my good friend Kruda is saying, how many records do you know that were produced in Germany that give you such a nice warm feeling in your belly? And it's very much from these wires that we source the wires from places that not normally you can get much high quality audio from. Audio is our passion, as we like to say. Audio.
Absolutely, it's audio.
Audio is our passion. Mm-hmm. But when you're in this business like we are, it's very hard to come up with, say, like the covers for the records, like the record covers. Like, how do you do this?
Yeah, who do you know? Because we were just in a world of audio. We did not know visual. Visual was totally different. That's a different gymnasium entirely. And so what we had to do is we had to travel, and we had to do a lot of DMT with various wild peoples of the world. And, we went to beach raves, went to Cornish beach raves, and that's where we met Aphex Twin, and he said to us, "Hey, buddies, have you heard of all this software?" And we were like, "No." And so we met all these visual software art, and that's when we met Banksy. And we'll reveal the identity of Banksy is Jerry.
Yes, and the most striking thing about Aphex Twin is there's such great accumulation of records that he has, as he told us. From the great forefathers of our movement, AC/DC, is a long way to the top if you want to make down-tempo IDM.
Yeah, I think we can also learn. We can learn from AC/DC, and we can learn from our own German post-war bands like Can. We like Can and Emondul 2 and Faust and various bands like this. Ich mochte deine Down-Tempo IDM, and we can find a lot of inspiration in other rock bands like AC/DC, like Led Zeppelin, and of course.
Now, Kruda, I believe we're being a bit amiss because we have a guest that we must introduce on the show.
Okay, Dorfmeister, you are absolutely correct. We have a very special guest here today. We have a very special guest. It is Jeremy Appel on House of Decline. Thank you, Jeremy, for coming in.
Hello, yeah, great to be back.
You are back. I have to confess, we did improv as Kruder and Dorfmeister before, but I foolishly did not have my mic in front of me, and so we had to abandon 7 minutes of material.
A little sneak peek behind the scenes, but Alex and I are improv masters. In fact, we went to school for it. We went to school to do improv. And often in college, we would sit around in class improvising on garbage cans. You just made up instruments that don't make any sense, and we got degrees for that.
You went to improv school.
Yeah,
basically, yeah. But
like you went to school specifically for improv, like that.
Not specifically. It was just a class there that we took a lot.
We've mentioned it before.
I thought there were like improv degrees going around.
There are improv degrees. We know people that got in music improv. Yeah, people that got degrees in making it up.
Yeah,
I did Second City like lessons when I was like a teenager.
Cool.
Did it help you?
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun.
I love improv. It's just the people that do improv and stick with it tend to be
weird.
I'll just say they're on all the time.
Yeah, they're high energy folk. They're cultish psychos. Did your improv training, Jeremy? Did your improv training help you come up with such snappy comebacks on Twitter?
Maybe. I hadn't thought about that, but I think the thing with Twitter is like you use it enough, you get a feel for the medium and how to sort of navigate it. So I'd always thought of my relative Twitter prominence as just something that sort of I acquired, spending enough time on the app. But maybe there's some like deep-seated drive to improvise. And
well, I think that is because it is like the best thing that Twitter is like, other than like sort of headline journalism and like yelling at celebrities, it's like the riff machine, right? You can get a thread where people are joking back and forth, and they can get pretty funny at times. And I think part of your appeal as a journalist too is that you do combine it with this almost sort of comedy cleverness, which imbues your stuff with a pretty unique sensibility.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, in that regard, I would say my inspiration is Ken Klippenstein, right? Because he's a troll, but he's a troll who gets the goods. And
He's, and like our inspiration is Don Hughes, who you may be familiar with.
Oh yeah, no, he's a friend of mine.
Awesome.
Hell yeah.
He's
That's so
he's
cool.
He's an inspiration.
Like a friendly acquaintance.
Internet friend. Yeah.
We DM.
Nice.
Hell yeah. Because DMing with Hughes.
Yeah. No, not actually. Yeah, no, he's great. Very dry.
Yeah.
Very but his posting is
yeah, he's a genius poster. Just savant like. Him and Biederman are the funniest ones in the game to me. They're the funniest guys in the game to me. Who would you say? Who are the funniest Twitter guys in the game to you?
Definitely Biederman.
Yeah.
I mean, like Piss Pig Granddad.
Oh yeah, but he's TrueAnon pod now. He's posting his TrueAnon pod.
He posted guns today. He's at the shooting range today.
Yeah, he's a big gun guy. I think that's kind of cool. I mean, Canada, of course. It's pretty easy to get a gun in Canada, but you have to jump through a lot of hoops that you don't in the States because it's not like a right to have in Canada. But here where I live in a little province called Alberta, guns are huge.
Yeah.
Like, do they sell guns at Canadian Tires in Ontario?
Probably. I imagine you get out to like some of the more rural Canadian tires. You probably
that's what I was thinking. Because I've definitely seen,
but not in the city. I don't see guns at Canadian Tires in the city. No.
Yeah, no, there's no guns at the Canadian Tire down the street from me in Calgary. But I lived in rural Alberta a while, and you see guns in like Canadian Tire, and that's kind of a culture shock coming from like Toronto or Calgary or whatever. But there's this big, because Alberta is a very conservative province, and they don't like that Trudeau kid much.
He's a little. I mean, we don't like that Trudeau kid that much.
No,
but
we
for
don't,
the right reasons.
Yeah, we don't like him for reasons that exist.
Yes,
not like
they don't like him because they think
like fucking like AstroTurf fossil fuel billionaire funded grievances. Yeah. Against because I mean basically we're living under the yoke of this ultra conservative government led by a guy by the name of Jason Kenneth.
Kenneth.
That's what Naomi Wolf said, and she's an academic. So
she's a smart lady.
She's a doctor of wolves. Apparently, that's why her name is Naomi Wolf. She's a lupologist.
Dude, she's a lunatic.
Yes.
I don't know why.
I love how like once a year Naomi Klein like whenever Naomi Wolf says something stupid, which is more than once a year, but when once a year like really blows up, Naomi Klein is just like, reminder, I am not Naomi Wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like Matt Gertz, who's been having problems being identified with as Matt Gaetz.
Who I'm told from by intrepid investigative journalist Glenn Greenwald is totally innocent.
Oh, and
that the Democrats are already locking him up for nothing.
Yeah, it's true. It's a travesty.
I've been thinking about Glenn, and people have been like, Glenn devolved. But as you pointed out, you did some good journalism on this, Jeremy. You pointed out that, no, Glenn's always been this way. He defended Nazis at the that was his big deal before he became Citizen 4 guy, was defending Nazis.
David Newer is a good resource for that. He's this historian who covers the far right. He's really good at Twitter. He's kind of a libbo, like whatever. He gets the goods. And yeah, I mean, Greenwald didn't just defend a Nazi, because like you're defending a Nazi from like, especially in the States where you have a First Amendment. I mean, you know, everyone's entitled to a defense, but he was defending this Nazi, but I believe his name was Matthew Hale. He was defending his right to be admitted to the bar as a lawyer, even though he was the leader of a neo-Nazi cult that had killed the guy.
Yeah, I think that's disqualifying, I would say.
Yeah, as a lawyer.
And everyone's entitled to a defense, but I feel like, so there's this old rule in lawyering, in traditional lawyering, it comes up in England called the cab bank rule, which is, it is legally ethical. It is the most legally ethical to never turn down a client. Everyone deserves representation.
Yeah.
As a lawyer, your duty is only to your profession. It is your Bushido code that you represent everybody that comes to you. But of course, there's a caveat to that, which is like, if you think you can't represent a client adequately, you should recuse yourself, because then you are not giving them adequate representation, and it would be unethical. So, you know, the classic example is like a Jewish guy, obviously not Glenn Greenwald, wouldn't want to defend a Nazi because it's like, I feel so emotional about the Nazis that I'm not going to defend them well. But the thing is that if you have any normal moral conviction, I feel everyone's defense would be compromised by representing a Nazi. Like, it's like, I feel like that's why I don't know. That's probably a half-baked reasoning.
But he did what is, I think, troubling about that was the amount of zeal that Greenwald defended Matthew Hale's right to be admitted to the bar. He said something along the lines of, and this is classic Greenwald, that these allegations are simply guilt by association, and the people who are fighting them in court are so repugnant that it provides its own motivation for me to take on this case. Which is, I mean, a bit over dramatic, but you see him. I mean, that is like, you can, and also it's really interesting because when you look at his old blogs, like before he rebranded as this Bush administration critic, it was very like boilerplate right-wing stuff. And then all of a sudden he just realizes, George W. Bush is actually bad.
But that's okay. So I was thinking about this earlier because I was thinking about how when Jon Stewart went on Crossfire and owned Tucker Carlson, and everyone was like, he ended this man's career. Or the fact, just the miracle of The Daily Show at all seeming like radical or progressive at the time was because the post 9/11 like Bush insanity where everyone became, Jingo Star was it was so fucking weird and fascistic that people like Jon Stewart and people like Glenn Greenwald were able to come across as radicals just for stating the basic moral position.
But that was sort of like, I feel like he was a liberal. Greenwald was a liberal then, and then under the Obama administration, he rebranded as this like radical, and then under the Trump administration, he rebranded as this like right-wing culture warrior.
He's just a contrarian, I guess.
Well, it's like Christopher Hitchens. Like, I think he saw which way the winds were blowing and realized that this was a great opportunity for him to like strengthen his brand or something. Yeah. I mean, he's clearly unwell. If you go to his Twitter page, he tweets 50 times a day. And like I've gone days where I've tweeted like 20, 30 times and I felt like a fucking basket case, but like 50. And I mean, the guy's got like 1.2 million followers.
Yeah, and he responds to you if you criticize him. I like respond to him when I have like 20 followers, and he's like, I did, yeah.
Yeah, it's because he's that thin-skinned. But here's a passage from a blog post he wrote in December 2005 about immigration. There are, needless to say, some people who oppose illegal immigration due to racist or xenophobic sentiments. But you can find some people who advocate for almost any perfectly innocuous position who do so with malignant motives. There are, for instance, people who oppose tax cuts because they're socialists.
Yeah, he's a fan of empire. That's always why I thought why he moved to Brazil, because the only time he sort of made sense was in the 90s, because that's when he could be like a crusader. So he just went back to where gay politics...
He's trying to take over Brazil, I'm pretty sure. Like, everyone's like, oh, he's done great stuff. He's like helping Lula get out of jail, but I'm pretty sure he's going to try to like take over.
I'm pretty sure the person who should be credited with getting Lula out of jail, if anyone in this instance, is the person who leaked that information to Glenn Greenwald, not him.
Yeah.
But he has this tendency to put himself in the stories, right? Like with Snowden. That's a perfect example. But anyways, he sucks now, and like, it's kind of funny and it's kind of sad and it's kind of infuriating which way his career is taken. But like, at the end of the day, he was overrated anyways. Like he got like a good scoop like handed to him. And I mean, I've got
a legendary movie, legendary. Do you like Citizen 4? I think is a genuinely great movie. I
saw it and looked up to Greenwald. Now it would be interesting to see how well it's aged. I did like. It would be interesting to see also what Laura Poitras thinks of where Glenn has gone.
Yeah, what does Edward Snowden think of Glenn? I don't know what his
I think
take on
Edward
it.
Snowden, though, is like Glenn in that he's like a right-winger who likes civil liberties and, living in Russia and shit.
I remember I saw Citizen 4 in a theater filled with old people, and they were all asleep. And I was on the edge of my seat, like biting my lip and like wringing my hands together and basically being like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And my dad was next to me, passed out, just totally 100% asleep. And he was like, when the movie was over, I was like pacing back and forth about the government and the NSA spying on us, and my dad was like, I didn't really like it. I didn't really understand what was going on. I was like, you and everyone else were asleep.
Yeah, I liked Poitras's Julian Assange documentary that came out after that. She had to keep re-editing because like she kept like finding out shit about him that like
We'll talk about an insane guy with bad politics who did some good stuff once.
I think there's a big, and I think Greenwald would like admit to this proudly, that there's a clear parallel between like Julian Assange and him in terms of losing their goddamn minds and also not being great people to begin with, but having this weird cult following of people who insist they're always operating in good faith because
like Elon Musk.
Yeah, as Saturday Night Live host, Elon Musk. Which, by the way, like people are like screeching about that online, but I mean, SNL had Steve Forbes host in the 90s.
Trump.
Well, yeah, but also when Steve Forbes hosted, I believe Rage Against the Machine was the scheduled musical guest. And they played Bulls on Parade with like upside down American flags on their amps.
That's very funny.
And then they weren't allowed to play. And then they weren't allowed to play a second song.
Yeah.
That's amazing. We have Richard Spencer and Propagandhi on this week's SNL. It's also, I mean, SNL is the fucking middle of the road, bottom of the barrel, just lowest common denominator. And like, I mean, The Simpsons had an sucking Elon Musk's dick episode, so it's like, why would you expect the Saturday Night Live, which carries much less cultural purchase, to not do that?
Do new Simpsons episodes carry cultural purchase though?
No, but it's
like
still
I think
like
that,
the
like
memory.
they make money, but it's not like early Simpsons was really formative in
Subversive.
like irony laden 90s like popular culture, and then sort of the nostalgia for that you see.
Yeah, and the humor
more
was
recently.
Yeah, it was anti-authoritarian as well. Whereas,
and it was profound critique of celebrity culture and like American materialism that it's now become part of. There's a great episode of the podcast Seriously Wrong. Do you know them?
Mm-hmm. No, I do not.
I think they're Canadian.
Oh yeah.
Are they Canadian? Well, anyways, they did an episode on why The Simpsons sucks now, and it was really fucking good. And
and Saturday Night Live has our savior. We want our star savior. But the Elon's milquetoast bad comedy is part of his appeal. That's his whole thing. Because Elon is not an inventor. He's a hype man. And what he understands is what gives nerds boners. And so he needs to give nerds lots of boners. And like lots of nerds like stupid, shitty comedy. Lots of STEM lords watch SNL. Even if because they think it's genuinely funny, because they're dumb. Or at least they're dumb at comedy.
Yeah, I think my parents still watch SNL. They always did growing up, which is why I never got into it. Because like SNL was like for my parents, Mad TV was like our generation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But SNL, that's another example of a show that within its early formative years was seen as incredibly controversial and subversive, and then became part of the culture that it was mocking.
Yeah, I think you're going to see that with some of the big podcasts.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, not to name any names, but we kind of want to do that. We'll sell out. We'll sell out.
Yeah, absolutely, in a heartbeat. Yeah, this, I'm black-pilled now.
This is Pod Save America. My name is John Four. And here we're talking about why Biden is my sexy grandpa.
Does Pod Save America still happen?
Yeah.
Like it's still making episodes. Oh,
Crooked media, bigger than
actually,
ever.
There's a podcast in Alberta, in Calgary, where I live, called The Strategists. And it's just a bunch of these washed up, like center-right political hacks just talking about just giving people like free advice. And
they should have called their podcast "The Smartest Guys in the Room."
I feel like there is a podcast called that.
Okay.
Well, do you guys have you guys probably have Pod Save the Queen, right?
Yeah, we have a royalist. Conrad Black starts Pod Save the Queen.
Okay, well, the Queen's gonna die soon. And so I doubt there's yet a podcast named Pod Save the King, and I think we should start it before anyone else does.
Become a pro-royalist podcast and just do royal gossip?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the King.
I can't participate in that because Alberta is going to separate and become part of the United States.
You're right. We should.
Yeah, we touched on Alberta. Let's return back. I was trying to look up Jason Kenney. What kind of a guy is that guy?
He's an interesting fellow, to put it mildly. He grew up, I think his dad was involved with like the Liberal Party, and then
the Liberal
he sort of was, and then became this like weird. He led the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, which is like exactly what it sounds like. It's like a low budget like Cato Institute. And he became this weird like Catholic, like not quite Opus Dei, but like along those lines. Like he's some part of some weird like Catholic sect. And he actually got kicked out of a Jesuit college near San Francisco for being too extreme in his anti-abortion views. And he was actually interviewed by a CNN.
That's too extreme.
What? Yeah. What does that mean?
Okay, but
was it like a Kevin Williamson thing where he said jail women for abortions?
Well, Kevin Williamson said that they should be hanged for getting abortions, which is like so specific. You know, he's like pondered that issue for a very long time and then just came out and was like, yeah, no, it should be a hanging. But no, Jason Kenney. So the school, basically there was like some sort of court case with the school where the court ordered them, or maybe it was just like a board of governance thing, but basically they had to allow pro-choice people to table on their campus. And Jason Kenney just thought that that was like such an outrage that these people are advocating murder. That is and it's totally against Catholic teachings, and how dare they bring this onto our campus. And he was interviewed by CNN at the time in the Chiron. You can see in a lot of press progress stories, they use it a bunch. It says Jason Kenney, anti-abortion activist. And so he did that. He also successfully lobbied against gay partners to be included as family members as far as like hospital visits go. And this was like in the AIDS crisis, right?
Well, they might get their AIDS on the family members, you see.
Yeah. And anyways, he's quite proud of that. Basically came back to Canada, ran for federal politics for what became the Federal Conservative Party. And he was always at the right wing of the party. He said famously once in Parliament, gays should be able to get married to people of the opposite sex. Like, I'm not against gay marriage,
Roasted.
right?
He's doing jokes. He's doing jokes. That's his thing.
Oh man, if you see him when he was like a younger member of Parliament, like if you look up a speech of his in support of the Iraq War in Parliament, because Canada didn't, I mean, at least on paper, didn't participate in the Iraq War, and there was a big debate in Canada. Like all the newspapers, except for the Toronto Star, were like, "Yeah, let's do this. Our American allies need us." And the government, but there are also like huge demonstrations against the war in like all of Canada's major cities. And so the Liberal government at the time stayed out of it, and the Conservatives were like outraged. And if you see the speech Kenney gave in Parliament, he was just so mad, like his face just red with anger. Like, how dare you not join our American allies? How dare you insult them like this? And anyways, so he was a member of Parliament for a while. Stephen Harper became Prime Minister, who was the leader of the Conservatives, and he was seen as more like sympathetic to the social conservatives in the party, like Kenney. But he largely like marginalized them, but he put Kenney in a role of like reaching out to immigrant communities and sort of playing on their like socially conservative impulses a lot of them have to vote conservative, and was quite successful. But then in 2015, Trudeau was sort of able to win back all those like suburban immigrant voters with the strength of his brand,
the strength of his handsomeness, the strength of his strong jaw.
Kenney saw the writing on the wall, didn't run for re-election that election, and then went back to Alberta, which was being run by like pretty much a centrist government, but like a neoliberal government led by the New Democrats, which were at some point in the past like a social democratic party. And so it was like this socialist takeover of Alberta was how they saw it. The oil and gas industry is like Alberta alone has more oil than Iraq.
Yeah.
Or than the entire United States. Like,
yes.
like there's a lot of fucking oil in Alberta. And which is interesting because you see the supposed left-wing party in Alberta, and they're like, "Oh, we're very disappointed that Joe Biden, canceled Keystone XL."
Yeah, it does suck for you guys who like oil and pumping it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sucks for people who have had the prospect of their oil jobs coming back to them, dangled in front of them by these cheap right-wing and like centrist demagogues.
Yeah, exactly.
Who think the world revolves around us and can see which way the wind's blowing, but just doesn't care and is like fighting against the future.
Yeah, I mean, a Canadian Fort McMurray burned to the ground because of the oil industry, and that there was no cause for pause. Everyone just continued on as if everything was normal.
Yeah, well, but anyways, Kenney comes back, and because basically the New Democrats won in 2015 because there was a split on the right. There was the Progressive Conservative Party, which had ruled the province since like the 70s.
Yeah,
consistently.
Preston Manning and shit like that.
No. Preston Manning was Reform. That's
you're right. He was Reform. Who am I thinking of? What cowboy hat wearing creep am I thinking of?
Ralph Klein.
Yeah, that Ralph Klein is who
King Ralph. Yeah. He was kind of like a proto Rob Ford. In that he was like a drunken mess. He once showed up at a homeless shelter and threw money at people.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, but he was like a former like broadcaster, so like he was very good at like playing on people's emotions, and that was when
you say King Ralph. You're of course aware of the John Goodman movie King Ralph, right?
I'm not. Is that
you're not aware of the John Goodman?
That's based on?
No, well, it might be what that's based on, but because the John Goodman movie King Ralph is this sort of John Goodman is a boorish American, but he becomes royalty, and everyone in the royalty is offended by his boorish American attitude. But in that is the model for these sort of like populist drunken dirtbags like Rob Ford and Doug Ford and and Ralph Klein and Donald Trump. They're King Ralphs. They're upsetting the elite class with their their rowdy frat boy Chris Farley ways.
Yes, Andrew Jackson prototype.
Yes, yeah, precisely.
Yeah. Let's all have a big drunk party in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
Well, Kenney is, as I said, he belongs to some weird Catholic sect. Like,
he's not a King Ralph. He's a trad cat psycho.
He's a teetotaler. As far as I know, he's never he's single. He's never, that we know of, been in a romantic relationship. I don't think he has any friends. Guy? Like, he is solely dedicated to promoting this hardcore neoliberal / freaky Catholic ideology. And Alberta is like, he came back to Alberta because he represented Calgary and Ottawa. Came back to Alberta, merged these two conservative parties together, created one like super conservative party, and was elected premier 2 years ago. And since then, he's cut corporate taxes by a lot, and then convened a panel of experts, air quotes around experts, like economists and shit, to find out what to do about Alberta's fiscal situation without looking at the revenue side, just on spending. So obviously they issued this report saying you have to cut like everything and do it quick, because they weren't given the option of being like, hey, maybe you can like introduce a provincial sales tax, because we're the only province without one. But yeah, so Kenney's like this like people call him an incel, but he's really a volcel.
Yeah, he has got the volcel power. He harvests all of his pent up cum in his gigantic scrotum. He doesn't even masturbate. He's just got this gigantic ball sack that is just festering with Cherenkov radiation.
Yeah, and people talk about how like Doug Ford in Ontario like cried like these crocodile tears, but Kenney doesn't even do that. Like one reporter asked him if he regrets, because he obviously he's one of those like, we need to keep the economy going guys, like
Yeah, can't stop the wheel of Mammon. You need to shovel more bodies into the Mammon machine, you know?
Exactly. And so a reporter asked him, like, do you feel bad for any of the deaths that have happened when you could have taken action sooner? And he was just like, how dare you? That sounds like an NDP politician's question, not a journalist. Like, you just
respect that way more than Doug Ford's crying game.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I know that reporter, and he's good. But some of these reporters could use some bullying, that's for sure.
Yeah. But Jason Kenney, he's not a good villain, too, because he's such a little bitch as well.
Yeah.
That's the other quality of him. He's not like... Who's like a great villain is like a guy like Larry Ellison, who's just, you know, totally evil, but also in control and sort of charismatic.
Who's Larry Ellison again?
The Oracle CEO, who has, like, plastic surgery.
Yeah, look up Larry Ellison. He is not he just lost to Google in a case that was huge because Oracle bought Java, the programming language, and tried to like make it so that no one else can use the programming language Java, and they sued Google for using Java. God. And Google, thank God, won. It's not like great. We're not big rooting Google for fan, Google. But Ralph Ellison, if you've ever seen Silicon Valley,
Larry Ellison, Ralph Ellison is Invisible Man.
I'm sorry,
Ralph Ellison's good.
Keith Ellison, no. Larry Ellison he's basically, if you've seen Silicon Valley, he's the leader of Hooli, that character. I don't know.
Oh yeah, didn't that guy just get Me Too'd?
Like the actor?
The guy that played Gavin Belson?
Oh, no. Gavin
No,
Belson.
you're thinking of Thomas Middleditch. You're thinking of the main Silicon Valley guy.
Yeah, that's who I thought you were referring to. But
got a little
I looked
too
up a
handsy.
picture of him and
Gavin Belson is like the Larry Ellison. Just a dumb CEO that lucked his way into controlling one of the major tech companies.
Mm-hmm. But it's also
that sounds like
ruthless.
Most of them.
Yeah.
Like the Google guys were legit, like nerds who knew what they were doing.
But we all know, thanks to David Fincher, that Zuckerberg stole Facebook from the Winklevi.
Who were themselves not too smart. I mean,
yeah, you don't need to be a genius to come up with a great business idea, I think is the I think that's the general thrust. Or to come up with something as dumb as Twitter, which is just like a format. Twitter is just like a UX. That's all it is. And we love it. We love it, folks.
Interesting. I think that's why, the Google guys tried to come up with the social network and they couldn't do it.
Because that's all the social network. Social network is just a UX. That's all it is.
Nerds are not good at social networking.
What's a UX?
A user experience. What does it feel like using the website? How easy is it to, say, get to comments that you want to get to? Or, how intrusive are ads? Or, how intrusive are, the algorithm recommended stuff? You know, all of that user experience is what makes a certain type of social media sticky, or what gives it a quality that you want to keep coming back to. And, Twitter's stickiness is a result of it, with retweets and the fact that faves from your followers will make the people you follow will make shit show up in your feed. That part of the user experience is what contributes to Twitter's social media gestalt, and it's part of why I like it as well. But I also want to talk to you about the ultimate Jason Kenney, not the ultimate Jason Kenney little bitch move, but one of the funniest little bitch moves of Jason Kenney, which is the Bigfoot debacle. Can you describe the Bigfoot debacle?
So there's a lot of lore here. So basically, when Kenney was running against the New Democrats, a gal by the name of Rachel Notley, who fucking loves oil.
She busts a Nutley over oil.
Yeah. But is better on a lot of social issues. It's night and day, and they're a bit because Alberta is this cowboy province that was ruled by conservatives, and before that people who were to the right of the conservatives for a very long time. It's labor laws and stuff are backwards, and so the NDP did a bit to bring us a bit up to date, but a lot of that's being reversed. So Kenney said that he sort of, in true right-wing populist fashion, he sort of created this narrative that there's this international conspiracy to defame Alberta's clean, ethical oil, which is substantially dirtier than like other sources of oil because it's very bituminous.
It's shale oil, right?
No, it's bitumen.
Oh, it's because it's tar sands.
Yeah,
oil, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And right, so he sort of created this external enemy, and he said that Notley and Trudeau are appeasing them, and we're going to fight back, and said he has this fight back strategy. So yeah, I didn't know he was a trot. But so
Trotsky Kenney is very funny. And he'll get a nice pick.
In another life, he could have been like a hardcore trot, just selling like newspapers on the corner that are like
has that
typos.
Same Volcel intensity that Trotsky had.
But so this fight back strategy was like two-pronged. So there was a war room he was going to create to fight back against disinformation in the media, which is like people reporting accurately about the tar sands, but like skimming it with a fine-tuned comb to find like one minor like factual inaccuracy and being like, aha, National Geographic is lying about our industry to try and destroy us. And so that was
he literally called it his war room, right?
Yeah. But then once that was on the campaign trail. And then once he introduced it was like the Canadian Energy Center. It's filled with like failed candidates for his party that like couldn't win in Calgary and Edmonton. So he gave them a job there. And the second prong of that is which is probably funnier now is the to launch an inquiry into this foreign funded campaign to destroy the tar sands, which we're not allowed to call, they're the oil sands. But this guy who is leading the inquiry is some like lawyer who like donated money to the Conservatives, and he keeps having to like, the report was due like at least a year ago, but he keeps being like, oh, I need another extension. Haven't found too much, and it just keeps going and going. So he's like making good money on it. And none of the people who are named in the terms of the inquiry have been contacted about it. So like Greenpeace, my friends at Progress Alberta, they haven't contacted any of them. But they have commissioned a couple of like really unhinged like papers about like George Soros and like
hell yeah.
I've written a bit about that. But back to the war room, which sort of actually how I came to like prominence in Alberta media was I wrote an op-ed about how ridiculous they are.
Yeah,
and
for the Medhat News, right?
Yeah, and they're idiots, so they emailed me and my boss saying when they could have just emailed my boss, I'm glad they didn't, saying that there are some factual inaccuracies in my piece that they want to correct. They'll have something by Monday and run it as soon as possible. And so I screenshotted that because everyone was dunking on the war room, and I was just like, fucking bring it. And then I just like went from being like some small town journalist to like someone like my follower count like tripled overnight. So I am forever grateful to them. But their most recent and there were a bunch of mishaps. They stole their logo from some US software company and had to get a new one. And then the new one was also allegedly stolen from a US software company, but like they didn't do anything about it. And then the New York Times ran some feature on tar sands, and the whoever's in charge of their like social media account just went on a rant against the New York Times, like accusing it of being like anti-Semitic. And there's
the famously anti-Semitic Jew York Times.
let me, man, it was really funny when it happened. It got deleted, and then Tom Olson, who is the guy who runs it, who was a failed conservative candidate in the election that the party won.
Ooh, that's not good.
Yeah, he also he was a scab at the Calgary Herald newspaper when they went on strike in 1999. They brought him in. Well, actually, he was in management, but he chose to cross the picket line. Now, this guy also has a band called Tom Olson and the Wreckage.
Hell yeah. That's so cool. Did they do middling blues rock covers?
Yeah, sounds like blues rock.
Yeah. Did they do tragically hip covers?
I mean, it's Alberta, so there's definitely like a country tinge to it, I would imagine. Yeah. But so the Canadian Energy Centre said that the Times has been called out for anti-Semitism countless times, has a quote-unquote dodgy track record, is routinely accused of bias, and not the most dependable source.
Yes.
And anyways, Tom Olson wrote a tweet apologizing for some of the tweets in the Canadian Energy Centre Twitter thread this morning. The tone did not meet CEC's standard for public discourse. This issue has been dealt with internally. And by the way, this is written like a poem. Like each sentence is a stanza. Like there are no periods. It's just the next line starts.
It's like written like a Q drop or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he says there will be a substantive response to the NYT article within our mandate of challenging inaccuracies.
Ah, man.
But anyway, so they hadn't done much. They didn't, it took them a long time to respond to the cancellation of Keystone. And then they come out swinging with an attack on a Belgian animated Netflix movie for children called Bigfoot Family, which is apparently a sequel to a movie called Son of Bigfoot. So this one's for the whole family, and they said that it was very troubling that they're indoctrinating kids with anti-oil and gas messaging because it depicts an oil company trying to like blow up an underground area with a nuclear device to get all the oil in there, which is actually something the oil and gas industry in Alberta tried to do in like the 50s, but were stopped by, or maybe it may have been like, but anyways, they were stopped by the liberal government, of course.
Commies.
Yeah, well, just another example of liberals stifling our oil and gas sector.
They were probably like taking the atomic bomb secrets and giving them to commie countries.
Yeah, they were giving them to China. The liberals were in the 50s giving them to China.
So basically, the movie is about how Bigfoot decides to go up to Alaska. It doesn't even take place in Alberta to see what this oil and this really greenwashed oil and gas company. You see their CEO on TV. He has like a ponytail and he talks about how their oil is the cleanest. And then he sees that there are protests against it as well. So he goes up to investigate because he's Bigfoot, and Bigfoot's a detective, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, he's Detective Bigfoot, of course.
And then he goes missing.
Shit.
And so
is it up to Bigfoot's family to save him?
Yeah. Son of Bigfoot and all their like animal friends get into a car and they drive through Canada to get to Alaska to find out what happened to Bigfoot.
Wait, so you're saying Bigfoot's from Canada and he went to America?
No. They live in the States. This movie takes place in the States.
Bigfoot is obviously American.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. Bigfoot, yeah.
Yeah, it's just that's the only part that takes place in Canada when they're driving like through the border and you see like Mounties who need a reminder American listeners may look cute and fun, but are mass murderers.
Yeah, they kill indigenous people at astonishing rates, and they have blood on their hands constantly.
Yeah. Though I know a guy who's an RCMP sergeant near Medicine Hat, and he's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, everyone, there's everyone.
But like, not just that he's like a good guy. That he's like, yes, we need to reform, and like he's like a work within the system type, and I don't agree with that. But
ACAB includes Dudley Do-Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's the institution that's rotten. There are individuals in every policing system who are dedicated to reform. It's just, I mean, they've reformed.
But they become bastards because of the system. Even if they're nice, you just become you can't help but become a bastard.
Anyways, we're talking about Bigfoot.
Yeah, talking about Bigfoot.
We're talking about Bigfoot.
These movies seem really needle.
They didn't do the scene where the RCMP does a starlight tour on Bigfoot.
Yeah, well, anyways, they go up, and of course, Bigfoot's been kidnapped by the oil and gas company. And so it's up to his son to save him. But then the son gets kidnapped by the oil and gas company and almost gets killed. And basically, they're saying this is absolutely slanderous, that this is depicting oil and gas workers in Alberta as murderers. Because that's what they always do. They always shove like the oil and gas workers in front of themselves as a human shield to be like, and the NDP did this too. It's like, why are they against workers? Like, we just want workers to have jobs, as if like no one's advocating for a Green New Deal. Yeah. My buddy actually here in Calgary, Tom Ross, who works at one of the radio stations, asked Jason Kenney when this was early COVID, when like oil prices were like negative. Especially because Alberta oil, again, it costs more to take out of the ground. So there's always a price differential. And so he asked him, he's like, hey, there are U.S. politicians who are advocating Green New Deal. Like, have you thought about talking to any of them about it? And he's just like, that's a ridiculous question. Like, I'm focused on real solutions, not these pie in the sky. He literally used the words pie in the sky, like socialist fantasies. And it just showed that this guy's pure ideology. Like, you can't depart one iota. Otherwise, you're the enemy. Which includes, half of the people in Alberta. Although he's super unpopular now, like he used the pandemic as an opportunity to like fire educational assistants from schools. He's just like, you don't need them anymore.
Evil. These people, educational assistants, the nicest people on earth.
but also he was asked about the Worms campaign against Bigfoot, and he was like 100% down. He was like, we shouldn't, like, they're defaming our oil and gas industry. We shouldn't pretend this isn't happening. We need to do something about it. And they're brainwashing children to think that oil and gas is bad.
So he's going to declare war on Belgium?
No, but he also called it a Hollywood production, because that's a huge part of the narrative too.
In the triple
that all
parentheses.
These Hollywood stars like Jane Fonda and Leo DiCaprio and Neil Young, even though he's Canadian, but
I'm a Hollywood star. I'm big in Hollywood. I did adrenochrome with Harvey Weinstein.
I do. Jordan Peterson kind of sounds like Neil Young, doesn't he?
Yeah, you're right a little. I'm a vampire, baby.
But yeah, I mean, that's a perfect song you mentioned, Vampire Blues, because I mean, he's talking about the tar sands in like the 70s when no one gave a fuck. He was like, the 70s were a great time for the tar sands, right? Because like the Arab, the OPEC oil embargo on Western countries was fucking great for Alberta. It was like, we got a lot of oil. Just saying.
Yeah, I think climate change will actually be good for Alberta, because it'll be very hard to extract oil from countries where it's too hot to be outside. Seriously, it's gonna be too hot to like in the shade. Like,
that's true. It will narrow the price differential gap.
Yeah, So that's good
Well,
news.
there are you can read there's some pretty freaky books out there about how like climate change is actually really good for Canada. It'll be good for agriculture industry.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's like, wow,
absolutely.
you're a fucking psycho.
Yeah, no,
Like,
No, if you
why
want
are
to
you-
take the black pill,
The
Canada
Russians
is.
are so into this theory too. That's why I think Russia
Yeah, that's true.
is.
Putin is a big proponent of it. I had a barber in Medicine Hat, he's a funny guy, but he's like huge into conspiracy theories and was like posting about David Icke. He was posting like David Icke videos and shit. And this guy's Jewish too, like not David Icke, my friend in Medicine Hat. And David Icke has some interesting views about the Holocaust, but he was just telling me once when he was like shaving my head, he was just like, yeah, man, you gotta watch this Putin video, like he knows what's up. Like he's saying that like all this like green energy stuff, it's gonna benefit Russia because they're still drilling, or it's like some shit. And I was like, cool. Here's here, let me are you done cutting my hair?
I just want to show him first reformed and be like, just wrap barbed wire around my body and get a suicide vest, and then
That's a
be
fucking
talked
great
out of it.
movie. Speaking of Neil Young,
Yeah. First Reformed is my favorite. I was thinking about it. It's my favorite movie of the last decade. It's my favorite movie of the.
I
the
think my
2010s.
favorite movie I guess my favorite movie of this decade is definitely Sound of Metal.
I haven't seen it.
yeah, I
You've seen
haven't
some
seen
of the
it.
Oscar movies.
It's too
right?
real.
Yeah,
Too
I was
real.
actually supposed to go on my friends at Kino Lefter's podcast today, but Evan McDonald canceled me. It's cancel culture.
Boo! Boo!
Yeah,
Listen to House of Decline over
he-
Kino.
he-
Kino
he-
is a very good show.
He overbooked. He booked too many Oscar movies, and so now he's talking to someone about Minari and The Father. And I was going to do. I was supposed to do Sound of Metal and Mank, which I quite liked. I liked Mank a lot. Evan was like, I didn't like it, and I was excited to destroy him in the realm of ideas about how Mank is a good movie. But it didn't happen. And no, Kino Lefter is a good podcast. You guys should listen to it. But where was I? We were talking about Alberta.
We're just Jason Kenney and Bigfoot. But
Oh
the thing
yeah,
that
Bigfoot
I was
family. And so this movie, the guy who makes it, who lives in Belgium, is just like, what the fuck? I was just making a kids movie about like how they should care about the planet. And
the other funny thing about this guy's credits is that his other biggest production credit is Paw Patrol, which is famously seen as, the right-wing reactionary kids cartoon, which I thought was funny.
Wow.
but wasn't
it's not. Paw Patrol is not actually right-wing reactionary, but I understand why cop dogs would be understood to be that.
well, they're not pigs.
No, they're not. That would be
That
funny.
would be
You
awesome.
do Pig
That,
Patrol.
I would
yeah.
show. I mean, I don't have kids, but Steven, you
Bunch
have a
of
kid.
lazy cop pigs.
Almost. Not quite.
Oh, I thought.
July.
Oh, I thought that you were already a dad.
Technically.
But,
we're past the point. We're past the point of viability. So yes, I am.
Yeah, you did it.
It's
guys-
finally a human.
According to the law.
Yeah.
You guys ever hear of a fellow by the name of Brett Wilson?
Oh, I wanted.
Brett Wilson?
I wasn't sure how to transition to Brett Wilson because I don't know much about him. He's also in Alberta.
Yeah, and so also this just reminds me that there's this like movement to separate Alberta from the rest of Canada because Trudeau is mean to us because he
Great Reset.
only gives oil companies like billions of dollars and not trillions.
Yeah.
And these guys love the free market otherwise, but and now Kenney isn't a separatist, but he's almost doing like a David Cameron type thing where he's like dog whistling to it and hoping it'll just go away after he wins the next election. And it worked out great for David Cameron.
Yeah,
so,
great strategy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he didn't. He fucked a pig twice in his life.
Yeah, and it's all these like junior oil and gas executives who like think Trudeau's a pedophile and that like climate change is like made up by George Soros.
First off, in Trudeau's sex life, he wants to be the kid, and there's nothing wrong with age play. Sorry.
Is he married to an older woman?
Anyways, and so one of these
no, he's not a Macron type.
Okay.
Like I'd say, well, not in that way. Trudeau's like Macron in a lot of ways, but not when it comes to being a victim.
No, Trudeau likes dressing up.
Yeah,
grooming.
Statutory rape and not having cougar time.
He likes outlandish costumes.
Yeah, he definitely does.
Do you think Trudeau's, because he had walked a mile in their shoes, is that why he resonated with the immigrant populations so much? But you even see it in those fucking horrifying photos of him. He dresses up in brownface with a bunch of Sikh guys next to him, and they're like,
That's the thing. That's like, it's also like Rob Ford, the legendary former mayor of Toronto, brother of the lesser Ford, Doug, who's running Ontario right now.
Children
like he
of a
also
lesser
like
Ford.
there are videos of him speaking like Jamaican patois, like obviously like coked out of his mind and wasted at a this diner near where I used to go to journalism school, and me and Eric and Marino used to hang out there. But he's speaking Jamaican patois, and obviously all the people in the media were like, well, isn't that racist? And it's like, how I talk when I'm with my friends is none of your business. And I mean, if you look at like people compare the Fords to Trump, and I mean, there are definitely some comparisons to be made by like rich boy populism. But one thing that's very different about the Fords is that a lot of their support comes from like communities of color, of people of color who just want lower taxes, road building, highways instead of public transit, and like anyone else in the suburbs. And they get a lot of their support from there. And again, so when they would say racist shit, people are just like, I don't know, he takes care of my interests, right? It's this like immigrant, like petit bourgeoisie that lives in like the suburbs, and,
Etobicoke Caribbean communities, Weston's not coming out for Ford, but those guys are.
Right. Yeah. Right. But anyways, so speaking of like dirtbag, wealthy, fake right-wing populists, this guy in Cal, he's my neighbor. Like he lives in my neighborhood. So he lives in the rich part of it. I live in like I live on like the main street, in case you've heard like sirens and like motorcycles. That's why. But so Brett Wilson is like this, like he used to be a dragon on the Canadian television reality show called Dragon's Den, which is a cheap knockoff of Shark Tank, except that they Mr. Wonderful, who is Canadian, Kevin O'Leary, ran for the leadership of the Conservative Party a few years ago, and then just dropped out because he's like, wait a minute, I don't speak French. And you gotta speak French if you want to be the Prime Minister of Canada.
He was polling real bad too.
No, like he was polling pretty well from what I remember. But in any event, Brett Wilson, Kevin O'Leary is also on Dragon's Den. Like it was sort of him giving back to the community, I guess.
And his wife killed somebody.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say his wife killed somebody. His wife. No, I guess you could say killed, because killed isn't like a. Like, yeah, she killed him.
She didn't murder somebody, but she killed somebody. Yeah, she was responsible for somebody's death.
But anyways, Brett Wilson was one of these scumbag like judges on this show where budding entrepreneurs present to a panel of like disgusting rich people, and they tell them how terrible their business ideas are, or think of a way to, if the business idea is good, to like fuck them out of it and give them an award for doing that. And so this guy Brett Wilson, he's like a Calgary like entrepreneur / philanthropist. He also is the co-owner of the Nashville Predators hockey team.
The Nashville Predators.
Yeah, but in recent years, he's like he used to be this like respectable member of like small C conservative, liberal like society in Calgary, and I mean, he came to my attention via posting like when I moved to Alberta, and he called environmentalists slimy bastards who should be hanged for treason.
Wow. I wonder how we would feel about Fern Gully.
And he thinks that, again, like Kenney, he thinks that Trudeau is like working for like big environmentalists, you know,
like he's deep state, motherfucking George Soros guy. He's got the Aga He's going to the Aga Khan Island in order to pray to their environmentalist owl god.
Yeah, but in reality, he's probably going to the Aga Khan Island to fuck kids.
Hell yeah. Well, allegedly.
Maybe take that out. Do you have any Ismaili Muslim listeners?
Probably not.
So maybe keep that.
Well, we can keep whatever we want.
But so
we'll take it out.
I'm finding it interesting. So what you're saying is that the conservatives in Canada are becoming like conspiracy minded to the same sort of degree that it is happening in America too.
I wouldn't say to the same degree, but it's definitely happening. And I think maybe Alberta is an outlier in that regard, like because federally, every parliament seat in Alberta is conservative except for one in Edmonton, which is represented by the NDP, which in Alberta are a centrist party. Federally, they're like a bit left of center. But Alberta is like a different breed. I feel like a lot of like American revolutionaries may have came to Alberta, whereas the loyalists went to like Ontario.
Yeah. I feel like more psycho Germans and psycho Ukrainians.
A lot of Ukrainians. Yeah. They have a monument to a Ukrainian Nazi, like Atomwaffen, like commander in Edmonton.
Well, Canada has a problem with.
Well, our finance minister delivered her budget. Was it last week? And people are talking about how it's historic because she's our first female finance minister. Now, she's also our first Banderite finance minister, which is, of course, the sort of Ukrainian fascist movement during World War II that supported the Nazis. Yeah, you know about the Banderites, Stephen?
I do, because I started learning about like Ukraine during the 2014 Ukrainian Revolution, which I initially supported, and then I did some more research and realized I was like, oh no, I don't think I want anything to do with this.
Yeah.
My favorite video game of the 90s was Crash Banderite.
Well, the Ukrainian, there's a lot of Nazism in Ukraine.
Well, I don't know if Chrystia Freeland's grandfather was a Nazi propagandist at in Nazi occupied Poland, which was like kind of like parts of it became Ukraine, and basically he could have sided with the Soviets, but instead he fled with the Nazis. And Chrystia Freeland used to be a journalist, right? She was at FT and the Globe and Mail and Reuters. Like, she's a pretty high placed person, and she's created this hagiography about him, about how her grandparents like were so dedicated to the cause of democracy in Ukraine. And she's talked about them repeatedly as this inspiration for her. And then it turns out some researchers in the Canadian Communist Party actually uncovered who her grandfather was and what he did during the war. And her uncle, who is a historian at the University of Alberta, like researched it and was like, yeah, this guy is a Nazi sympathizer. Like the publication he ran was a Nazi outlet. And Freeland actually herself like helped edit one of his papers about this Nazi newspaper. And then when it came out and reporters asked her about it, she was like, Russian propaganda. Like, you can't believe everything the Russians tell you. Like, she couldn't bring herself to say the words, yes, my grandfather, who I loved, who influenced me in certain ways, also had this dark side of his history. That would have put an end to it. But instead she was like, no, it's Russian propaganda. And then there's this, like, Freeland is definitely our Kamala in that he has this deranged
Oh, that's such a good fucking comparison.
Yeah, of, like, syphilitic, like, supporters on Twitter who think that any criticism you launch against her is rooted in sexism, and that you, like, she's a progressive icon. How dare you? Like, you know, like the Democrats in the States, the liberals in Canada, it's like they promise to do stuff, they don't do it. And when you suggest that maybe they should do that and more, their supporters are just like, how dare you?
You're a Russian plant.
Yeah. But anyway, but back to Brett. His name is actually W. Brett Wilson, and no one knows what the W stands for.
White.
Yeah,
it's there a name like W. Dave? I've seen that before.
Maybe it's a tribute to someone.
I think you can just put a W in front of your name, and that's you can just do that. Like,
it's pronounced Brett Wilson.
What Brett?
But anyway, so he's talking about how environmentalists need to be executed, and Trudeau is like a collaborator of theirs. He also,
there's one person in the Trudeau administration who's a collaborator.
Yeah, but not with environmentalists.
Yeah. Sorry, go on. Brett Wilson calling Trudeau a collaborator.
He lives in my neighborhood, and basically conservatives still fucking loved him because he was like their guy. Like, he was a strong supporter of the oil and gas industry. He was this philanthropist at his mansion. He would host these garden parties every year where all these like right-wing politicians and like fucking dumb celebrities would just go there to talk about what great people they are and donate money to some charity. I think recently it was like girls with eating disorders, which
that's nice.
Yeah, well,
that's anodyne.
Yeah, well, no, it was mental health charities, which included like girls with eating disorders, and take from that what you will, like teenagers with eating disorders. But so he also he was in the oil and gas industry at one point. He was board of director of a company called Forint. And he became its single largest shareholder. He invested a fuck ton of money in it to like expand gas exploration off the coast of Nova Scotia. But there was like regulatory uncertainty about fracking in the Maritimes. Like, from my understanding, there still is. And so that didn't go anywhere. And he also bought some lands that had never had oil and gas like drilled from them before. That didn't amount to much. But anyways, he ran this company into the ground. And basically, when an oil company goes bankrupt, there are a bunch of wells they have that are inactive, right? They can't sell them to pay off creditors. They're just there. And you need to clean them up because they're on people's land. Right. And I mean, there are leakage issues, but there's also like, if you're a rancher and you have animals there and then they,
fell down the drill hole again. Goats are filling up the old drill hole.
And so the basically there's the Orphan Well Association, which is, you go to their website, they use the word industry funded like 100 times. But since 2018, when a lot of oil companies have gone broke in the past 7 years, and since 2018, and so it got subsidized by governments, federal and provincial, including Trudeau, who gave them $200 million last year, no strings attached. And now it's mostly funded by government since 2018. So he kind of left these wells behind. There are court decisions since his company have gone bankrupt that ruled that when an oil company goes broke, before they pay off their creditors, they have an obligation to pay environmental costs.
It's
but
crazy
nobody
to think.
but the energy regulator here is bought and paid for by the industry, so they just don't enforce shit. And so this guy was able to dump 16 of these wells just onto the Orphan Well Association for them to worry about. And then they got money from the government to help clean up these wells. So this guy thinks Trudeau is like involved in this like globalist conspiracy to destroy Canada. But Trudeau is, he doesn't seem to mind when Trudeau's paying for his Orphan Wells to be decommissioned and then reclaimed. Now he also, so he was this sort of respectable philanthropist in like Calgary high society, but then he was okay.
Calgary high society.
Yeah, it's not very high. It's like Stampede, like
your bolo ties and your cowboy hats, and you're going to watch a Charlie Kaufman movie in your cowboy hat.
Yeah, but Brett, Brett, then did a little racism against Calgary's mayor, who is an Ismaili Muslim who was born in he wasn't born in Tanzania. His parents were from Tanzania. He was born in Toronto, actually. And he was like the first Muslim mayor in Canada, possibly North America. Naheed Nenshi. Yeah. He's like a fucking neoliberal. But he's the most popular politician in Canada, probably. He's like beloved, isn't he? I mean, he was, or at least he was like in the original days. He was very hyped. Yeah, I mean, he kept getting reelected in Calgary, and the right absolutely hates him, and one can only speculate as to why. Because he's very like pro business, right? Like he's a neoliberal. He got elected the same year as Rob Ford, actually. And they're both, he's also a pretty big guy, and they had some weight loss challenge, I think. Intercity weight loss challenge.
Rob Ford definitely won that.
So Nenshi's last election, all the polls said he was going to lose, that he lost his luster. There's this like conservative NPC named Bill Smith, who was polling ahead of Nenshi double digits.
His name is Bill Smith?
Yeah.
You couldn't invent a more... Is he like... Did they just get a character right out from Character Select? Like when you go to the conservative Character Select screen, they just didn't move any sliders and were just going for the ultimate generic man.
So, anyways, Nenshi beat him by double digits. The polls were all wrong.
With this asterisk, though, I'm looking on Wikipedia. Apparently there was lost ballots. They ran out of ballots? I'm seeing
in 2017.
Yeah, I'm reading this on Wikipedia that the election was wrought with controversy as the wait lines were long and they ran out of ballots. So maybe it's one of those classic center right elections that we have.
They're rigging them. We'll get Rudy on this. Get Rudy on this.
Get Rudy up there.
But so W. Brett Wilson did some casual racism against.
Yeah. He was like, I mean, because obviously he hates public transit, which was a big part of Nenshi's legacy. That's now in question because of Jason Kenney. He's like, I don't know if I'm going to pay for it now, but because there's this huge transit expansion planned here. But Wilson was like, Nenshi wouldn't have won if he didn't play the race card in Northeast Calgary to get ahead. Northeast Calgary is like Scarborough, right? It's very racialized, very underserved. And first of all, like Nenshi beat Bill Smith in like every ward in the city. It wasn't just in the Northeast that like put him ahead. If he had lost the Northeast, he still would have won just by less. And then all of a sudden he like lost some radio show he hosted, and some local comedian I'd never heard of called for not-for-profits to boycott him with his philanthropy and not to associate with him. And then he apologized and still has opinions on things, including that doctors aren't real unless they vote for his political party.
Doctors with borders is what you're saying.
Well, political. Yeah, he
Médecins avec frontières.
Hey, very good. Very good.
Yeah, he's Brett Wilson's wild, and he's like all these fucking rich loudmouths. He's exists on public generosity. And he was also Stephen, I'm sure you've heard that in Canada we got monthly payments if we were laid off because of COVID.
Yeah, but I also heard that then like they're taxed. Is that right? Lame.
Yeah.
So classic. What did he have to say? Was it the end of the world for him?
Well, no, he was just saying, like these are it's disincentivizing people to go to work. He's like, I've heard from many small business owners, and they're telling me that they're having trouble bringing people back to work because they can just sit at home instead. Yeah. And it's like, if you're having trouble bringing people back to work, like, I think the problem may be you, but
yeah, that we're having that debate in the States. It's like there's an article maybe once a week in all the major papers about how there's a labor shortage and people don't want to go back to work. And we've gotten far less in terms of money. In terms of how the economics of it work, I don't think it makes any sense at all with the paltry amount of money to blame workers. No one wants to work for bad pay during a pandemic, especially with the type of people that, all customers and consumers are. It's like people are horrible when they expect service from you. So I wouldn't work somewhere right now.
Yeah, why would you make anyone work in a highly dangerous area and make them interact with thousands of people each day? Because, all these small business people, it's all service industry shit. Most of it is service industry shit, which necessitates constant interaction with people, which in a pandemic you shouldn't be fucking doing.
You should also you look up a photo of Brett Wilson and Trudeau.
Of them together,
like they have like a Trump and the Clinton style photo.
Yeah, pretty much, and just how Brett looks into his eyes.
They're on the same team at the end.
Well, it was in Calgary. Here, there's this big controversy over this Dairy Queen parking lot.
Jock Dairy Queen, yes.
Yeah, downtown. That basically it was destroyed in a fire, and now. Now developers are saying that that the city won't let them have a drive-through.
Okay.
And all these right-wingers seized on that, and they're like, see, it's a war against cars. They just want to force everyone to public transit and create these one-size-fits-all neighborhoods.
If there was
all these right-wing pundits were like screeching about how it was government overreach that this Dairy Queen wasn't allowed to have a drive-through, and then the city came out and said actually they're allowed to have a drive-through. It's just they wanted it differently than it was before they burnt down, and we can't accommodate that. But they can have a drive-through. And of course, Brett Wilson was one of those people screeching about how this is an assault on like liberty, and that
I can't get my Frosties. No, that's Wendy's. I can't get my Blizzards.
He's very slimy
and they
looking.
won't flip it in front of me.
Yeah. Well, he also actually tweeted. People were retweeting it. He posted the other day saying he was drunk. Like someone replied to him asking him something, and he was just like, "Am drunk."
Yeah. I'm drunk on it. Look at other twist. Everyone looks so lame. Because he does have sort of that malevolent wine mom energy, right?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Where it's like, I'm just too drunk to. I'm at brunch right now. I'm at high society, girls. We're at like, what's the right wing equivalent of drag queen brunch?
Okay. Junior oil and gas CEO dinner.
There you go.
Like at one of those, at one of those like steak houses / pizzerias.
Yeah.
That you get in like
we put the steak on the pizza. Yeah.
Well, they don't put the steak. They're like separate, but they make a mean pizza and they also grill a good steak.
That's such a funny feature of Alberta culture.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, it's like Boston pizza, right? That's like an Alberta original. You don't have Boston pizza in the States, do you, Steven?
No, I don't think so. I've never heard of that. It sounds odd to me because
it's not has nothing to do with the Boston.
I mean in the Midwest we have horrible pizza. It's horrible. Ever since I moved from New York to Ann Arbor, the pizzas. I've just started making my
Boston's
pizza.
Not Midwest.
I know, but it sounds to me.
But Boston pizza is Midwest.
It sounds to me like someone from Alberta would think Boston is in the Midwest.
Yeah, that's true.
And
Jason Kenney thinks Boston.
Probably wasn't the founder of Boston Pizza another dragon on Dragon's Den?
I don't know much about the dragons.
Dragon is like a KKK like rank. It's so weird to hear you say that someone has. What the fuck?
We're doing the Dragon's Den special. It's the grand special after many years, which is why it's called the Grand Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have Wizard and Cyclops Den soon as well.
This guy Brett Wilson, he's wearing. I'm looking at pictures of him. He's wearing a Hawaiian shirt with camo. It's a camo Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, there's a picture of him actually in my story about him. Which you can link to if you want. There's a photo of him with a T-shirt that says "The science isn't settled"
on climate
what
change.
What a fucking prick!
But yeah, he's a huge climate science denier, like straight up, because it's just part of the conspiracy to destroy our precious, clean, ethical resources.
Yeah.
The thing that will make me a tanky is these people. The thing that will make me like, we have to take up arms, then the only way to fight is violence is by, we should, in my fantasy, which will never happen because I don't condone violence, is, we string these people up like Mussolini, That's the thing. When I just see their callousness and their heartlessness and their willingness to destroy the earth for short-term gains, it's just like, we can't liberal our way out of this.
That's what he says about his enemies, apparently, too. He's apparently wanting to hang all of his enemies.
Yeah.
Well, if he's going to do it, and we're just going to say, we don't want you to do that. Maybe we have to become the monsters.
Oh, no, well, I'm just saying what he's clearly saying what he wants to do to people who oppose him. And you can't just peacefully protest a guy who's like saying, "Oh no, I actually want to kill you."
Yeah, but I'm gonna have my first reform movement with people like these. I'm gonna wrap myself in barbed wire,
do it,
and shit. So, and the only thing that can stop me is Amanda Seyfried. We need you now, Amanda Seyfried.
Jeremy, we're definitely gonna link your article in the description, but I suggest you plug it as well right now because that's a good time.
Yeah. The story is called, I think it's just called W. Brett Wilson's Orphan Wells, or the definitive guide to W. Brett Wilson's Orphan Wells. Because this is something everyone, like whenever he fucking tweets his like climate denial or like pro-Trump or like, maybe Alberta should separate posts, people always, the replies always have people being like, clean up your orphan wells. And so this is something everyone knew about. Press Progress, this sort of leftish media outlet, a couple good friends of mine work for here in Canada, mentioned it in passing, but as me and my editor at the Progress Report, which people confuse for Press Progress, we're like, let's do like a definitive account of this, like so people can just share the article with him when and when he like screeches about like the carbon tax. Like we have a carbon tax in Canada. It's fucking bullshit. But the
half measure nothing.
Yeah, but the right wing backlash against it is like delicious.
And that's the progressreport.ca.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, their website's weird though. I would just Google it.
Okay.
Like Google Appel, Brett Wilson, Orphan.
Well, we'll link it. I think
we'll link to it in the show.
Yeah.
And also, do you have any other plugs? Do you want to plug BST or Fork Corn?
Yeah, I host 2 podcasts. I don't think listeners of the show would be so much into the Forgotten Corner, but maybe I'm wrong. So listen to the.
We just talked about Alberta for 90 minutes.
That's true. We did. Yeah. We didn't even talk much about Wexit.
We'll have to have you on for a Wexit episode.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it in passing, but there's like, essentially all our Q people want Alberta to separate.
Oh, that's a whole episode on it. We'll definitely have you in the future, because if Q foments in Alberta and the Wexit happens, it'll be brilliant.
Yeah, it will be a good comedy. But so I host the Forgotten Corner. We talk to like newsmakers and stuff in Alberta. We actually interviewed the aforementioned mayor of Calgary a few weeks ago. And I also host Big Shiny Takes, which you may have heard both Steven and Alex on at different points. Follow us at Big Shiny Takes on twitter.com. And follow me at Jeremy Appel 1025 at twitter.com. That's not like my email or anything. I'm just saying at, like, that is where you can.
Well, that was a very good show with our good friend Jeremy. We have some good audio from this show that we hope to see you in the future. This is Haus of Decline with your hosts Kruder and Dorfmeister. Do you have anything to say, Dorfmeister?
Dorfmeister just wants you to go to houseofdecline.com, and of course House is spelled Haus, the way we
in
spell
the proper
it
German
in
way.
Germany.
Danke.